Good morning, everyone. Pam Jacobson here, your host for Three Things That You Need to Know. Welcome, everyone. I appreciate you all being here with me today. For those of you who do not know me, I am currently working in the arena of functional medicine. I'm board certified in functional medicine. I work with clients all over the country, sharing my passion for helping all of you optimize your health. I have a long career in healthcare. I started out in conventional medicine as a nurse, got master's trained and licensed in Chinese medicine, opened a practice in 2005 in Orange County. And for the last 15 years, I've been studying in the area of how to restore function, how to create wellness. And that's what I do today. I work with clients all over the country. I've put my contact information in the chat area, but for those of you who are watching this as a video playback, you can reach me at my website. It's The Healing Sanctuary, OC, don't forget the OC.com, and you can reach me through there. So anyway, three things you need to know. Every week I try to cover an important nutrient because for two reasons. Our diets oftentimes leave us deficient in important nutrients and our food supply. So this week we're going to talk about omegas. That is somewhat of a confusing topic, right? Because there's different ones. Which one do I need? Do I need them all? So we'll talk about that. We're going to also discuss how to get unstuck on your way to your health optimization goals. We've been talking, this has been sort of a series each week, and we've talked about how to organize for success. We've talked about how to visualize your success. This week, we're going to talk about what to do when you get stuck on the way there. And then finally, we're going to wrap it up with a brief discussion on COVID, since that is absolutely still top of mind for most of us. You can't get away from it. It's in the news constantly, and it does appear that things are going to get way worse before they get better. And so I wanted to talk about some of the testing and what does it mean, and should you get an antibody test, and kind of what we understand about that right now. So, and then of course I'll entertain your questions all along the way. So be sure to put those in the chat box. And for those of you that are watching this back as a video playback, you can simply just, email me your questions through the website. Okay, so let's get started. So number one topic today is omega essential or omega fatty acids, right? So the first thing I want to say about these fatty acids is that they're critical for overall health. And it's all of the different types of fatty acids that are important, but there are some that are more important than others. And there's certainly different ways in which you would want to go about getting these, mostly through our daily dietary practice. But you'll see as we go along how that can sometimes be challenging depending on what your particular dietary practice is like. But definitely challenging for all of us due to just the lack of nutritional value today in a lot of our food supply. So there's basically, I'm going to talk about three key areas of fatty acids. I'm going to talk about omega-3, right? That's the fish oil that many of you've heard of, that you use on a regular basis, or perhaps if you're my patient already, it's something that I would commonly use for you. Omega-6 and omega-9, right? So there's a lot of confusion because you'll see products in the marketplace that are just omega-3 or just omega-9 or a combination of all three. And a question that I get frequently is, well, do I need all, and should I be using all three? So we're going to talk about that. But let's start with omega-3, which is considered an essential fatty acid. So what does that mean? Essential means that you do not make this in your body already. This is something that you have to get from the external environment, which would be consumption of food. There are really only a couple of foods that are rich in omega-3. That would be certain fish like salmon, fatty fish, and nuts and seeds. So not a lot of high density omega-3 value in our food supply. And many of us either avoid eating fish today or don't eat a lot of fish because of the mercury content, or perhaps we just don't really care for fish. And so we tend to be low in omega-3 essential fatty acids, and they are so very important for so many functions in the body, not the least of which is your brain health, your cardiovascular health. I mean, it's one of the most important things for cardiovascular health, and can be very effective in helping us manage any issues that we have with our cholesterol, triglycerides. It can help with blood pressure. It can help with reducing your risk for strokes and heart attacks. It's very important also for reducing risks of things like autoimmune disease, cancers. It's highly anti-inflammatory. So that covers the whole gamut of health when we're talking about inflammation being a big driver of health issues. It can improve sleep quality. It can improve your skin. I think you're kind of getting the idea, right? It's really important for everything. So, and the reason why I wanted to talk about omega-3 first is for that reason. It's first of all, you must have it. It's not so easy to get, right? If you're not eating fish on a really regular basis and the right type of fish, you are probably not getting enough quality omega-3. And eating fish, the quality of the fish makes a difference as well. Farmed fish does not make as much, and in some cases really doesn't make any quality omega-3. So I would say if you are eating fish, you should not be eating farmed fish, right? You need to be eating fish caught in their natural environment or wild caught. And as I said before, you can get omega-3s from nuts as well, but fish is certainly the best supply. So omega-3, super important. Omega-6, also important, although we tend to already overconsume omega-6 in our diets because it is in high amounts in vegetable oils, which are in almost all of the processed sunflower oil, and all of your, corn oil and the types of maybe not so good oils that we see in packaged foods. So omega-6s are essential. So you do not make them. You do have to get them from dietary consumption. But the reality is that they are readily available in the diet in very high amounts in a lot of the types of foods that Americans currently eat. And in large amounts, they become a problem. They are pro-inflammatory, so the opposite of omega-3. They create inflammation and can be very much a player in things like heart disease and brain disease and so forth. So what we need to understand about omega-6 is they're important, but and they're essential, meaning you don't make them, but you are probably already getting a significant amount from your dietary sources, mostly, as I said before, in the form of vegetable oils. Some of the good things that omega-6s do are provide us with protection for the heart, the bones, the nervous system. So they have a very important role. But I think that the reality when we look at the research around omegas is that omega-6 is something that you're going to get in ample amounts in your diet already, and you do not need to supplement them. So I would caution those of you that are using these combination 3, 6, 9 omegas, it is not necessary to supplement omega-6. It just really simply isn't. And if you are already getting a large amount of omega-6 in your diet, which is a good possibility, then you may actually even be creating an issue for yourself. So I failed to mention the names of some of the acids that might be helpful for you. Omega-3s are things like EPA, DHA, ALA. ALA is actually a plant form that converts into EPA and DHA. That's why you can get omega-3s from nuts and seeds. However, what I would say is that conversion gives you much smaller amounts. And EPA and DHA are important in many cases in higher amounts. So I'll talk about dosing in a couple minutes. But like I said, omega-6 readily available in the diet. I don't recommend that you supplement it. That is arachidonic acid, which in most things that you would read would paint the picture that arachidonic acid is a bad thing. And in most of us, it is simply because we have too much of it, and it is a pro-inflammatory compound. But linoleic acid is also an omega-6. So omega-9 is an oleic acid, and it's non-essential, right? We make a bit of it in our body already. And so again, it's one of these that's really not important to supplement. So I'm really not clear why there are supplements on the marketplace that give you all three. Maybe if you were in a situation where you were unable to get to food and you were very malnourished, maybe you would need something like that. But in the general American population, supplementing with omega-6 and omega-9, if you eat a regular American diet, or at least even a healthier version of that, your body makes omega-9, so you really don't need to supplement it. It's also available to you in olive oil, in canola oil, in almonds. So again, many of us are getting even the food supply sources of oleic acid on a regular enough basis that it is not important to make an effort to replace that. But omega-9s are really important for diabetes and blood sugar management and lowering triglycerides, helping manage hypertension, and they've got some benefits for reducing the risk of stroke and cardiovascular disease. So again, all of the omegas are important. Omega-3 and 6 are essential, so you must have them to sustain health and to sustain life. Omega-9 you make in your body, but it's really only omega-3 that we need to concern ourselves with in terms of replacement in the diet. So how much omega-3 should I get? So this is a topic I'm a bit passionate about because the advertising and marketing and printing on the labels of fish oil is misleading. Right? That you have the oil, the carrier. So EPA, DHA, and ALA are the three acids. And they are acid, folks. If you break open a fish oil capsule and you lay it on a piece of plastic, in short order, that plastic you will be able to see marking because the acids ate away at the plastic. So the acids are put into a carrier oil. Generally, a fish oil that comes from the fish would be cod, or sometimes you'll see it in salmon oil. So there's two issues I think inherent in over-the-counter fish oil products. Oils, regardless of where they come from, are volatile, meaning that unless they're properly stored, they can go rancid, and they also don't last a long period of time. So when you're purchasing fish oil, you want to be careful to, I would say, purchase from reputable manufacturers, preferably those that test their product, third party, and also in small batches, because if you buy large amounts and it sits for a period of time, you're going to have a bigger chance of that oil being rancid. And the problem is you're not necessarily going to know, and then you're now putting an inflammatory substance into your body every time you take it. So I'm really, really picky about the quality of my fish oil. I believe that fish oils probably should be the most expensive product sitting on your countertop if it's well made, if it's tested. There's, a number of brands out there, even over-the-counter brands that I support. I really like Nordic Naturals Pro Omega 2000. I prescribe it regularly. It's a little hard to find in stores. You have to buy it online. I just prescribe it through my supplier, FullScript. So if you want access to that, you certainly can reach out to me. But Carlson does a reasonably good job. The Zone brand fish oil, that they do third-party testing, and it's a decent one. But the key then, once you've got the assurance that your product, the oil carrier is good, then it's the potency. So and I would say most of it, this is true, most of the fish oil products over the counter are very low potency. What that means is when you look at the back of the bottle, you will see those three acids, EPA, DHA, ALA, will be listed there, or should be listed there. And next to them will be the milligrams that are contained within the oil. Now, oftentimes on the front of the fish oil bottle, say contains 1,000 milligrams per serving. What they're talking about is the oil, the carrier, which is not important. What's important is the acids contained in that oil, and on the back label, they have to specify how many milligrams of each of those acids are contained there. What you want to do then is to add that number of each of those together, and you want to get around 1,000 milligrams or so per capsule. So then you have to look at your serving size. Most fish oils, you'll see, in order to get what's listed on that label, it'll say 2 capsules or 3 capsules. And if it's already a very low dose, you might have to take 12 or 16 capsules just to get yourself up to a dosing level that would be beneficial. So I know it may seem a little bit daunting, but I want you to follow me on this, because I think many of you are buying, first of all, low quality fish oil supplements, which are creating more damage, inflammatory damage than not. And you're not getting a product that is giving you a therapeutic level of the acids that you're looking for, right? EPA is critical for really whole body. We think of the EPA for the musculoskeletal system and its benefits, and the heart, cardiovascular. We think of DHA as really very, very important for the brain. In fact, there's some products out there that only have high doses of the DHA acid specifically for brain health. So very important that you're getting a good therapeutic level. And the best way to tell that is just to look on the back of the bottle and see how many milligrams per one capsule are you getting of EPA, DHA, and ALA. And you just add those together. Right, add them together, and you want it to be somewhere between 700 and 1,000 milligrams per capsule. And then the dose would be anywhere from one to up to probably four of those capsules a day. If you're somebody who has a very high risk cardiovascular situation, right, a lot of family history of heart disease, or you currently are on cholesterol lowering meds or blood pressure medication, or you have diabetes, you're going to err on the side of that higher dosing. If you're somebody who's pretty healthy, eats really good, reasonable diet, eats fish a couple times a week, you probably could get away with the 1 to 2 capsules a day range. So hopefully that helps to clarify a little bit about omegas. When you're going to supplement them, which you should, you only need to supplement omega-3. It needs to be high quality, and it needs to be therapeutic dosing. So again, some of the over-the-counter brands, and again, things to know about companies like Nordic Naturals and Carlson, is that they've got all different levels of products within that range. So you need to be looking. One of the reasons why the Pro Omega 2000 is not something you find on the shelf at like a Whole Foods type place is because it is their flagship, really high dose product that tends to be more on the expensive side. So you will usually have to go find that online. So anyway, I know it's a plug for Nordic Naturals. I have nothing to do with any of these companies that I ever talk about. But there's some really great from the nutraceutical manufacturers I use, like Orthomolecular has a terrific fish oil I've used for years. Designs for Health, my personal choice on a daily basis, is a liquid fish oil from Designs for Health that is easy to take because I don't have to swallow those big capsules, and tastes amazing. So you've got lots of options when it comes to that. So do please reach out if you need me to answer any questions, or you want me to help you get access to a good quality high dose product for yourself. So there you have it. Fish oil, super important. If you're not taking it, you should be. I don't care where you're at on the health spectrum. Everybody needs essential fatty acids. And I can tell you that through my work of testing people, the majority of us are not where we need to be with our omega-3 on a daily basis. So definitely need to test. Okay, moving on. Number 2, how do we get unstuck, right? So the first thing I want to say is that anytime you're on a health optimization journey, you're going to have periods of time up and down, where you may hit plateaus or you may get stuck. But I wanted to, rather than allowing that to throw us off our path, allowing that to derail our progress, I think first accepting the fact that these things happen, and the whole point of the things we've talked about in the previous weeks, organizing for, planning, prepping for, visualizing for, we've created a structure that we know works and that we can go back to when we get off track. So I think for me, that is a big saving grace, right? When I'm, let's say I'm on a 7-week or maybe a 2-week vacation to Europe. And although I'm moving my body every day, a lot walking, because that's what you do there, I'm also, taking advantage of some of my expanded food options, if you will, and maybe a little bit more alcohol as well on a regular basis. And without doubt, I'm going to pick up a few pounds on that trip. But it doesn't worry me, and I'll tell you why it doesn't. Because I have a really clear, proven structure that I just simply return to as soon as I get back, and within short order, everything's kind of back on track for me. So that's a passion I have for everyone. It's not that we can be in constant perfect health. It's just not really possible. Plus, what fun would that be? Really? You want to be able to, within a certain amount of reasonableness, have a good time on vacation or on the weekend, but know what your structure is. So when we're on our way to developing that structure, I call that health optimization. Health optimization is what's the best structure for me that I can return to over and over again to keep myself on a pretty good trajectory toward quality and longevity. But when I get stuck on that journey, what can I do about that? And so I wanted to, discuss a little bit of the kind of tips and tricks, if you will, that I've learned over the years. And number one, and I might sound like a little bit of a broken record here because I have brought this up the last couple of weeks, but I think it just bears repeating, is that you have to, anytime you find yourself off track, the very first thing you need to do is re-examine why you're on the journey to begin with. I think that's super important. Why are you on the journey? What was it that brought you here that was important enough for you to start this? You need to re-examine that and also really determine, is it time to change that? Is it now no longer strong enough to keep me motivated to be moving in the direction of my success? So re-examine your why and change it if you need to, or expand it if you need to, but it has to be powerful enough to drive you on in a passionate way, right? It has to be something that you're passionate about so that you stay moving, motivated to move in the right direction. I think it's also a time to re-examine the goal or goals that you have. Are they reasonable, right? Let's just say I'm on my goal is a weight loss goal. I want to lose, 50 pounds in 6 months. And I'm finding that I'm 4 months in and I've only lost 20 pounds. So it's clear that I'm probably not going to reach my goal. And that can be demotivating in and of itself when we have a realization that we're not going to reach the goal we had set. So I think when we find ourselves stuck, sometimes it can be because the goals that we've set for ourselves weren't reasonable, right? I'm a big advocate of setting yourself up to win right from the get-go. So when I am choosing goals for myself, in this case, we're talking about health optimization. When I'm choosing goals for myself, I make sure that I create things that I know I'm going to be able to achieve. And so if it's a weight loss goal, for instance, I would do a little research on that, figure out that, probably a reasonable amount of weight to expect to lose would be around 2 to 2.2 pounds a week, right? That's readily available in the literature. And then that would be probably the max that would be sustainable. I would back off from that just a little bit, and that's how I would do my calculation. So again, point number 2 is, did you set reasonable goals? Are they attainable? Did you set yourself up to win? This might be a time to do a little bit of an adjustment. Number 3, decide if you are really committed, right? Did this just sound like a good idea? Was somebody else doing it? Did you sort of jump on board at the time? It was a whim or an impulse decision, and you find out that you were really interested, but you're not really committed. If you're not really committed to doing the work it's going to take to move you toward attaining the goal that you have, then you're not going to be successful. And so again, if you find yourself stuck, is your why strong enough? Is your goal attainable? And more importantly, are you really committed? I mean, are you willing to do the work that it's going to take to get you to where you want to go? So I think those are the 3 kind of primary criteria. But let's just say that you say, check, check, check. Yes, I'm all in. All those things are good. My why is strong. My goal is attainable, and I'm very committed. Okay, but I'm still stuck. So what do I do? Well, number 1, I think you have to look at the work that you are doing. So what is, you make yourself a list. What are the things I believe that I need to be doing in order to reach my goal? And again, we're talking about health optimization here. You can use the structure for any type of success journey that you may be on, whether it's financial or career or relationship or whatever. But today we're talking about health optimization. So what is the work I need to do? I think you have to first understand what will move you in the direction of obtaining your goal. So we'll just continue on our example of weight loss. If my goal is a weight loss goal, what are the things that I'm going to need to do in order to assure that I'm going to, lose the weight that I had planned, that my goal had laid out for me? I'm going to need to get reasonable amounts of quality sleep. I'm going to need to manage my stress response. I'm going to need to move my body most days, if not every day. And I'm going to need to eat a reasonably reasonably appropriate diet for what I'm trying to achieve, right? It depends on how much weight I need to lose, whether or not I'm going to do calorie restriction, or I'm going to have some fasting in there, or I'm going to do a special kind of diet like Whole 30, or maybe a little bit of modified keto. Whatever that is, you have to really understand what the work is so that you're making the right choices on a daily basis. So I think it is first, re-examine what work you are doing. If you're committed, what did you commit to? And is it, more importantly, not only just the work, but are you doing those things correctly, right? If I use sleep as an example, are you getting 8 hours of sleep? Are you consistently using the last 45 minutes before bed to get prepared for good sleep, right? Turning off your electronics and not watching the news, and doing, calming activities, maybe popping in a meditation right as soon as you get into bed, maybe using melatonin to deepen your sleep, right? There's things in each one of these categories that you need to be doing. So not only are you doing the work, but are you doing the right things correctly, right? It's not just enough to say, yep, I went to sleep. You have to know whether you're doing the right things correctly. This is where it helps to do a little bit of research when you're setting up your goals and your plan for health optimization. Sometimes working with someone like me, or a health coach, or someone who can help you to create that structure for yourself. But it is, what is the work you should be doing? Are you doing the work correctly? So is it the right work, and is it being done correctly? Are you tracking and measuring? This is an extremely important point when we are stuck. I find that what happens for many of us is we are not really paying attention to how we're doing things, and tracking and measuring can be eye-opening. It's a great educational tool. And I feel, for me anyway, when I implement a tracking and measuring, I 100% of the time figure out what I've been doing incorrectly and why I am stuck. I'll use an example. Again, using the weight loss idea, is using a track and measure app like Stupid Simple Macros is my favorite one to use, but you've got MyFitnessPal. There's lots of them out there. But my Stupid Simple Macros is an app that allows me to track my macros for the day, my proteins, my fats, my carbs. And it has me set up my profile so it knows, what my height and my goal weight is, and how many calories a day I'm consuming, and so forth, and or that I want to consume. And then I track my food input, my intake, for about a week. And 100% of the time, I'm never where I'm not doing what I thought I was doing, right? My carbs will be higher than they should be. My proteins will be lower than they should be, or higher. A lot of times we overconsume protein. And my fats are rarely where I want them to be. And interestingly enough, they're usually too low. I grew up in that low fat revolution. So it's really hard to change that whole mindset around not eating much fat. We were told, fat makes you fat, fat makes you fit. No, it doesn't. Fat's really important when it's done correctly. And this tracking and measuring helps us to figure that out, right? And so tracking and measuring is super important, whether it's what you're eating, how much activity. Again, a lot of us think we're doing a lot more activity or burning a lot more calories to stoke up our metabolism than we really are. So when we track and measure, we might find that, wow, I could really step it up a little bit. Or maybe I'm not even sure how many calories I should be consuming. And that's a good time to, find somebody in your local community, a gym, or maybe a practitioner office where you can get a body composition done to see what your body fat is and your muscle mass. And that can be very helpful as a measuring tool to kind of set a baseline for you of where you need to go from there, right? How many calories do you burn just sitting still? What does your metabolism look like? And, that gives you an idea then of how to set your dietary intake. Tracking your sleep, apps like Sleep Cycle can tell you how good the quality of your sleep is. Apps like Insight Timer can tell you whether or not you're doing a good job with your stress response management, and it can remind you to do it. So again, track and measure, use these tools. There's so many wearable devices. I've done, multiple discussions about these in the past. Wearable devices, apps for your phone, reminders, all kinds of things that you can use out there. But again, if you find yourself stuck, track and measure the areas of work that you are that you need to focus on in order to move you toward your goal. I think you'll find a lot of times you may be doing the work and you may understand that what the correct work is to do, but you may find through tracking and measuring that you just aren't doing it properly. You're just not, taking it to the finish line. Accountability, right? I talked about this in the last couple of weeks as well, but I also find that anytime I'm stuck, and especially if I'm stuck longer than I should be, it's not just a passing, up and down of my journey. A lot of times it's because I'm a little bit in denial. That's really easy to happen during this COVID thing, guys. I mean, I don't know about you, but my whole routine, my environment, everything is upside down. You might be able to tell from my background that I'm not where I usually am. I'm having to tend to some family business. And so I'm coming to you live from a different place. I've had to get much more flexible, much more quick and able to pivot on a moment's notice. I'm sitting a lot more. I'm struggling with having, a routine that's similar to what I had in the past. And food now is readily available because most of us are still working from home or sheltering at home. And so it's now, I think, more important than ever to be clear about why you want to stay on your journey, re-examine your goals. Maybe they need to change just simply because of what's happened. Again, what is the right work to be doing, tracking and measuring it, but then accountability, right? We're not in our work environment, or perhaps our communication with our families is different and we're not seeing our friends. And so perhaps the accountability measure that you were using to keep you on track is now no longer available to you. So you may need to reconsider how you're going to be accountable, right? Maybe it's an online group that's been put together and you all meet once a week and you have a Zoom call together, or you're regularly texting each other daily with information about what you're doing and progress towards your goal. But the bottom line is, it's sort of human nature to be a little bit in denial and not move yourself forward. We are, I think, by nature, wanting to be part of community. So giving yourself the gift of accountability, whether it's, a family member or friend or community that you reach out to. At Level 10 Health, the company that I helped build a wellness program and a product line for, we have a great online community and anybody can belong to that. Level 10 Health, it's a private page, but you can request to join. I think it's an amazing community. There's over 1,000 members now, and it's just a lot of online posting, encouraging, supporting, and I do a lot of education on there every week. So a little plug for you there. If you find yourself stuck and you need some support and you just can't seem to find that in your local community, you certainly are invited to join our community. So accountability, really important. And then I think it is giving yourself the leeway, the kindness to self to redirect and to take a time out. Sometimes we just need to step back, take a deep breaths, maybe go out and sit in the sunshine for a little while, take a few days off, whatever it might be, and really let yourself re-examine what you're doing. Again, checking in with your why, maybe readjusting your goals or creating new ones, thinking about how you could be more accountable, but just giving yourself that sort of kind time out to take a deep breath. When you turn, I would encourage you to set up incentives for yourself to succeed. So first, be clear about your why and be clear about attainable goals, and then set incentives for yourself, right? In X amount of time, I will reach this part of my goal, and for that, I will get X, right? Whatever incentivizes you. Maybe it's an online purchase that you've been eyeing that you just don't quite feel worthy enough to get for yourself right now. Maybe you can make that part of reaching one of your goals, or whatever incentivizes you to be successful. I would make sure you build that into your program, because a lot of times we get stuck simply because we're just not incentivized, right? Who cares if I reach this? Why does it matter? So kind of a long conversation around getting unstuck, but some really important information, right? It happens. And I thought it was appropriate because I have felt really stuck in the last couple of weeks. We were rocking along, and the nation and the world was starting to open back up again, and you were starting to see signs of life out there, even though we all had masks on. And now with the increase in the COVID cases happening, we're starting to see that contract again, and lots of discussion about starting to close. I had actually planned a trip to go see family toward the end of July, early August, and now I'm feeling like that may not happen. So feeling stuck, right? So it's going to be important for me on my health journey to re-examine what I'm doing there, so that I don't end up creating health issues for myself, because that is a real danger. I think the bigger danger of the whole COVID situation is what we're going to see pop up for people from a health perspective, right? Diseases and conditions that have sort of been looming under there that are now going to be exacerbated because of our increased stress and our sitting and lack of movement and our, less than stellar diets and more consumption of alcohol, less quality sleep, you name it, right? So anyway, I hope that you found this helpful. So let's move on. Item number 3 will be relatively quick. I wanted to keep the emphasis a little bit on COVID for right now, because I was listening to a podcast, and I highly, highly, highly recommend this educational resource if you don't already follow him. Dr. Peter Attia, Attia, I mentioned him before. He has a great podcast called The Drive, and he interviews just some amazing people on there. But most recently, he's interviewed some amazing scientists and researchers in the field of immunology and virology, and the areas relevant to what we're all facing right now in terms of this global health crisis. And he recently interviewed a gentleman, a researcher, about the COVID, and it was really a discussion about antibodies and antibody testing, because that's all the buzz right now, right? So let me just review real quickly. So it's COVID-19. We're in a pandemic. We are on the upswing of cases right now because the world started to open back up, and of course, if we get all humans together again in environments where we're not protecting ourselves, which means no mask and not far enough apart, we're going to see the cases go up. And who knows how long we're going to be dealing with the situation. So I want to start by saying, do everything you can to protect yourself, wear your mask, socially distance when you can, and avoid risky environments, right? I would say, large gatherings, especially where food's involved, where you must remove the mask and be putting things in your mouth, that's a risky environment. I think that until we really, really, really understand how to get a handle on this, and more importantly, understand how this virus, which is very different from others, really does its work inside the human body. So, but here's something we do know. So there's 2 types of testing, for those of you that are still confused about that. You have the testing that will tell you whether or not you are currently infected, whether you have symptoms or not, and that is a nasal swab test where they're actually going up pretty high up into the sinuses. So there are some home tests, I think, now, and even some labs that will send you your own swabs. Here's what I want to say about that. You have to make sure that you're doing it properly. If you don't get high enough up into the nasal passage, you have a higher likelihood of a negative test, which would be false. So again, I personally think you should have a professional do it, because it's kind of, I would say it's relatively uncomfortable. It's momentary, but it doesn't feel great. And we are not going to typically inflict that kind of discomfort on ourselves. So you're better off having someone else do it, and preferably somebody who doesn't know or really care about you, because again, you're not likely to do it to somebody that you care about either. But essentially, it's a nasal swab. They get kind of up in there and get some of that debris out of there, and that's how we test to see if you have a current infection. I would say if you feel that you've been exposed, or you have a current infection or any kind of a symptom, and here's the issue with COVID, there's all kinds of symptoms, so very difficult to know if a particular symptom could be related or not, because we've seen everything from GI to neurologic things to, oftentimes it's not even respiratory, or there isn't necessarily a fever involved, so there's not any hallmark sign that you have the virus. But if you're going to get tested to see if you have a current infection, I think right now probably the easiest way to do that is just to go to a local urgent care that is offering that. In my area in Southern California, pretty much any urgent care can do the testing for you. It's quick. Most of them just have you sit in your car. They come out to you, they swab your nose, and you're on your way, and you get your results in a couple of days. The second testing is called antibody testing, and this is getting a lot of press. because most of us out there want to know, have I been exposed? I mean, have I had it and I just didn't know I had it? Or maybe you were really sick last December or January, and there's a lot of um, kind of insinuation, if you will, in the news that this has been here longer than we realized, and that there are actually many people who may have already had it, several months ago, and you want to know if you have had the virus. There is a blood test that can test for antibodies for the COVID-19 virus. Now, here's what I have to say about that, and this is what Peter Attia discussed in the recent podcast about COVID antibody testing. And that is that when we do the antibody testing, what we're looking for in the blood is antibodies against the virus. Okay, so what that test can tell you is whether or not you have been exposed, had the virus, and created antibodies. Okay, so that's legitimate. We can tell if you have antibodies. There's 3 different types of antibodies: IgM, which tells you that it was a recent infection, or maybe you're still currently dealing with it. There's IgG, which are the antibodies that kind of kick in when it's been some time, right? You move from IgM to IgG, which says, I had this virus several months ago, and and these antibodies are circulating. And then you have IgA, which is more of a mucosal form of the antibody. So I test all 3 in my patients that are requesting antibody testing. Because you can have, I had a test come back where the IgM was positive, but the IgG and the IgA were negative. What that tells me is that this person was likely very recently exposed and may still currently be shedding some virus. And so I sent them back to the lab to have their, or to an urgent care to have their nasal swab done to see if they had a current infection. So yes, in the antibody tests, we can tell if you have antibodies in your bloodstream. It does take some time after you've had the virus for those to really show up in a way that we can quantify on a blood test. But here's the rub, and this is what I really want people to understand, is well, first of all of the tests out there came to market very quickly. The FDA has not approved, to the best of my knowledge, any testing. They have given the green light to go ahead and market these tests because we needed testing available. But the long-term studies and scrutiny that's required to determine, is a test really significantly accurate, is not quite there. So there is still the possibility always that any test's accuracy is going to be a bit in question. So you kind of have to know that going in. But LabCorp and Quest, the 2 biggest labs in the country, do offer blood antibody testing, and they're the 2 labs that we use. It's a simple test. It's just a blood test, and you can go into the lab to have your blood drawn. And like I said, we can tell if you have antibodies. But here's what we can't tell, and this is what I think is important if you're going to seek this kind of testing, that you understand that it can tell you if you have had the virus. What it cannot tell you is if, number 1, you can get the virus again, and number 2, if the antibodies that you do have in your bloodstream are the type of antibodies that can disable the virus, right? So, and this is what Dr. Attia and the guest that he's interviewing, and I wish I could remember his name. It was David something. Anyway, this scientist talks about, there's antibodies, and then there's antibodies that actually are effective in disabling the virus. And obviously that's the type of antibody that you want to have in order to not get the virus again, or when you get exposed again, those antibodies are activated and they disable the virus before it becomes a problem. So what we are unable to tell right now, what we just don't have enough time under our belt with this particular virus, is we know that about 20% of the population of the world will not make disabling antibodies. Will make antibodies, but they're not the kind that can actually disable the virus. So just because you have a positive antibody test, that does not differentiate whether you are a person who is making the antibodies that are going to disable the virus, or you're just simply making antibodies, right, which are not going to be helpful in keeping you from infection in the future. What we also don't know is, let's say you are a person that's making great antibodies and it could disable the virus, how long is that going to be effective for? Again, part of this is just that it hasn't been enough time for these things to be tested. But I want to make sure if you're choosing to have an antibody test done, that you understand what that information tells you. It can tell you if you've had the virus, absolutely. It cannot tell you if you created antibodies that would disable that virus and keep you from getting it a second time. And it cannot tell you if you didn't, if you were creating disabling antibodies, how long would it keep you safe from an exposure? Those are things that we are working on. The scientist that Dr. Attia interviewed said that um, in the lab, they're able to test antibodies to see whether they are the right type of antibodies, but it's a very complex and challenging test to do. So it probably won't be anytime soon that we would be able to do a test like we do now, that which not only show antibodies, but tell you whether they were the kind of antibodies you needed. We should, in reasonably short order, be able to learn how much time a person can expect to be protected from the virus if they're producing the right type of antibodies. And that's just going to come with the research and the time that goes on as the virus is here. So I hope you find that helpful and a little bit elucidating. That'll help you make a decision about, should I get tested? What do I know about the information when it comes back? I think it's important to be educated, because you can be misled into believing that because you had a positive antibody test that you can't get the virus again, and that is absolutely 100% not true. So for me personally, it begs the question, should I be antibody tested? I guess if I'm curious to see if I've had the virus, but what it won't tell me is, can I get it again? So it doesn't really change my behavior. I still need to protect myself until I know that science is showing that we get 6 months or a year or maybe permanent immunity. And then the question is, am I making the right kind of antibodies? And according to this particular scientist, that is going to be a long time before we can answer that question. So anyway, there you have it. COVID testing, I think a good discussion on omegas. So, supplement with omega-3, don't bother supplementing with 6 and 9. And when you get stuck, there's a whole list of things that you could be doing. But I think one of the most important things is figure out a good reward system, right? We really do well with that. So anyway, that's 3 things that you need to know. I'm here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. live. This is reposted as a video that you can watch later. So for those of you who are joining me later, hello. If you have questions, please reach me through my website at thehealingsanctuaryoc.com. And I'm happy to answer your questions. And until next Wednesday, you guys all have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.